All right, welcome to another episode of Mike's Big Martial Knife Exploration Journey. On our last episode, we took a look at the Baron Son American Bowie with the bone handle and their proprietary high-definition Damascus. Today we're going to take a look at the Baron Son American Bowie bone handle with the Sandvik steel. Now, this one is just a little bit more than half the price of this one. But is this one actually a better knife? So like the two Gold Rush Bowies we've taken a look at, this is 12C27N Sandvik steel, shaving sharp out of the box. And on the Gold Rushes, it stayed that way through testing and use. Really impressive edge holding. Now, this one, though, has the keener edge of the other American Bowie. So it's a really high, flat saber grind on a fairly slim blade. It's just a shave under 4 millimeters thick. Now, out of the box, the high-definition Damascus, it was sharp, but it was a bit toothy, not quite shaving sharp. This one is shaving sharp. And, yeah, I just feel like the out-of-the-box edge is just overall nicer. Let's try a little cardboard, obviously. Yes, we are going to do more intense testing. But, yeah, my initial impressions, nice edge. I don't have much to say about the sheath. It's exactly the same sheath as the Damascus version, which I don't like as much as the dangler sheaths that come with some of their other knives. Talk about that in carrying and handling. Yeah, I just get, well, more comfortable to carry and in certain ways easier to draw out of the danglers than I do out of this really wide belt loop. Now, I am experimenting with just kind of breaking in the leather, making it more flexible so it does have more give and pivot for drawing. We'll come back to that. But, I mean, the fit is just fine. You've got the diagonal thumb brake strap, which is on the spine edge, so it doesn't cut itself up. It's well fit to the blade. It does not take much break-in before it draws and resheathes, yeah, pretty smoothly. So it's an okay sheath, but I would prefer their dangler version. Specs and build, pretty much identical to the Damascus version, including some of the QC issues, which we'll get to. But biggest difference besides the steel is I picked this up for less than $120 US at Chicago Knife Works. I'll put the link down in the description as usual, compared to more like $200 for the Damascus version. So we're talking about a difference in steel and price. And how that equation plays out in terms of overall value, well, we'll find out today. But just like the Damascus version, 9 1/8 inch or 23 centimeter long blade that is 1 5/8 inches or 4 centimeters wide and just a shave under 4 millimeters thick. It is 4 millimeters thick in the full visible tang, but I think you lose some in the final finishing. And speaking of final finishing, out of the box, a bit rougher finish, I would say, than the Gold Rushes were. More signs of either fine sanding marks or brush marks. Now, there was also a faint brown stain on the blade. I don't know where it came from, what did it, but I went ahead and took just a little bit of Mother's Mag to the blade, which polished it up a bit in the process. Stain came right out, but brought the finish up to where the Gold Rushes were out of the box. So a little bit of work, cleaned it up, made it prettier. We are talking about a very fine secondary edge bevel. Already talked about edge geometry. Lines of the blade, like the Damascus version, it does show just slight bits of unevenness, that kind of hand finish look. I think the worst part of it, it's hard to see, is the spine is not flat. It kind of wavers a bit. I can feel it more than I can see it. But my biggest issue with the finishing of the blade is the same issue I had on the Damascus version, is they put pretty much zero effort into putting a swedge on the back of that clip point, which just kind of makes the knife look unfinished to me. Now, in the Damascus version, I did put a chopping false edge on there, so I'm probably going to do that to this one too. Down the friendly end, fit is nice and tight. Not so many egregious gaps in the guard as there were on some of their other builds. Bone handle scale secured by 2 pins. Grip length, 5 inches, 12.5 centimeters. Overall length, 14.25 inches, 36 centimeters. Weight, just like the Damascus version, 16 ounces, 454 grams. Point of balance, just like the Damascus version, just ahead of the guard. But just like the Damascus version, one of the biggest issues I had were the handle scales. On this version, they were very lopsided in terms of how they were shaped. But let's say they were evenly lopsided. High on one side, low on the other, and when you put two that are shaped that way together, you wind up having it high on one side in the front, and then low, and then high on one side in the back, and then low. And what that resulted in was the blade was canted in my grip about 5 degrees to the left. So I had to do some reduction and rounding, and that definitely proved that these are indeed real bone scales. You find that out really quick when you put them to power tools. But it wasn't too hard a job to do and made the knife feel great. However, okay, this one I would have to say is worse. Their Cocobolo scales are very well done, but so far 2 for 2 on their bone scales. Really, really sloppy. Just roughly finished again at the top, but the shaping. Okay, look at the bottom. There's a massive amount of taper there, but I feel like the taper is backwards. It's narrower on the spine side and wider on the blade side. I do feel like it would make more sense the other way. Now, holding it blade towards me, North American Bowie style, that actually feels pretty good. But edge forward, yeah, it feels weird. And the lines are just not even at all. Now, I'm going to try to reshape them, but take a look at the marrow of the bone. On those high sides, that's really close to the surface material. I'm not sure how much I can get away with removing before these just, completely fail on me. I'm going to see what I can do, though, before I put it through the testing. So go ahead and do that. Run my usual impact and durability tests, and from your perspective, I'll be right back. All right, how'd it do? I say really good. Now, in my review of the Damascus version, I was a little nervous about how that one was going to do, especially given how, well, thin that edge profile is. I figured the Sandvik could potentially be more durable, but the Damascus blade just did fine in all of my tests and didn't suffer any damage to speak of whatsoever. So other than scuffing the fancy finish, which I wasn't so worried about with this one, So I did go a little bit harder with it. Now, first test was thrusting and stabbing into my pel, stab him, multiple layers of thick cardboard backed up by a couple of inches of compressed brown paper backed up by wood. I used 4 grips, 2 forward, 2 reverse. So in the forward grip, standard grip with the blade facing away from me, and then flipping it around North American Bowie style with the edge towards me, and then basically same blade orientations in the reverse grip. Penetration, really good. Not uncomfortable, even given how square that guard is. They've rounded it just enough. There's a bit of slippage on the smooth bone scales, and no, I haven't reshaped them yet. And when I do that, I'll probably make them just slightly coarser so they'll be even grippier like I did with the Damascus version, but I decided to go ahead and try the tests, well, with the grips as is, even though they're kind of weird. So the next test I did was the board tests, shaving, carving, chopping on boards, and yeah, this is actually a great tool for that. I was having a little challenge, probably because of the funny shaped grip with edge alignment, but when it bit deep. I was really impressed with how it was doing, and because it's Sandvik and not Damascus, I'm not worried about marring the fancy finish. I went a little bit harder with it, and it held up just fine. For a pretty light, thin knife, yeah, you could use it for stuff like that. And again, specifically about the Damascus one, Ken Griffey said, don't use it like a machete, and I kind of use it like a machete, and it survived that. Yeah, this one did too. Is it more durable than the Damascus? I can't really say. I would say I like the edge better, and I'm not so worried about messing up the finish. Speaking of edge and finish, the final test, I saved the abusive one for last this time. The bamboo test, chopping, slashing into hard bamboo to see if I can intentionally induce a chip or a roll on a fragile edge. And pretty much as I expected, I was more worried about the Damascus one. This one did just fine in that test, took no damage whatsoever. Everything stayed tight. But comfort, yeah, weird handle scale, so I'm going to have to reshape those. And then I'll probably do something about, putting an actual false edge on it. And then we'll talk about Marshall handling. Down to the unflattering waistline view. I actually don't have much more to say about carry if you've already seen the video I've done on the Damascus version of this. I would prefer a knife of this length in the dangler sheath so it moves with me better, but what I've been doing is just really working that leather belt loop to give it more flexibility, so it is moving with me better, but its default position absolutely vertical, which also kind of restricts my draw to vertical. Thumb break's pretty good. I can draw it in the reverse grip pretty much straight up, but edges towards me, that's fine. I can certainly use it this way or flip it to the forward grip. We'll talk about transitions and handling. Drop it back in. It is a bit long for my old arthritic shoulders and short arms to do a straight conventional draw this way, but I could certainly manage it. And because the blade is reasonably slim and straight, I could twist my hand around cavalry style and manage that draw without any significant snagging. So it's working, but most of the time I'm just shoving it in my belt or waistband for cone carry style. Probably going to wind up getting another dangler sheath from Bear & Son. They're only about 30 bucks. Modifications made. I've actually tried to repolish the blade a few times because that weird brown spot is just barely visible, but it keeps returning for whatever reason. About right there on the blade. Don't know what that's from. Probably something inside the sheath, unfortunately. But also polishing it, it's starting to take out some of that kind of horizontal machining scoring, but it's still pretty prominent compared to the gold rushes. So yeah, I think finishing on this blade not nearly as clean as those. Also noticing more wavering lines on it. Now I did put a just basic chopping edge on that clip point like I did to the Damascus one. I might actually take this one a little bit further because I'm not so worried about ruining that swirly finish to make that more functional. And yeah, okay, there was only so much I felt I could do to the handle scales. They are rounder and more even, took out a lot of those flaws, but they still have this weird kind of triangular cross section which is narrower towards the back. Now, handling it for a couple of days like that, I'm getting used to it, and it's definitely helping me index the blade, because with a really straight blade like this and flipping it around, can't necessarily easily feel which way the edge is facing, but the grip helps me do that. It's just backwards from what I expect it will be. But just like the Damascus version, this is, for its size, a very light and nimble blade. So yes, I can slash and chop and do things like that, but it definitely seems to lean towards doing snapping cuts. And of course, straight profile, really good on the thrust. Now, flipping it around North American Bowie style, edge towards me, yeah, now that I've got a little bit of an edge on that clip point, I can do that. I can also use those back cuts this way as well, so yeah, I could do it with the blade in either orientation, make use of that. But yeah, thrusting in this orientation, very effective. And when it comes to gripping, well, I've got some good comfortable options. I can choke up either with my thumb locked over the guard, which is really good for utility use. I actually put this to some food prep in the last couple of days. And other close-in carving and, well, stabbing, thrusting, chopping, slashing. Now, this came up in another YouTuber's review on Bowie knives, the controversy about hooking the guard. Now, in Argentine Eskrima Criolla, I think it's referred to as the falcon grip or something like that, or talon grip. Two ways to do it: hooking your thumb in, well, conventional blade orientation, or, well, more common in North American Bowie style, doing it with the edge towards you. This actually is, I found, really good for utility use with the blade, but for close range stabbing and thrusting, it's not a bad grip. Now, it's very secure, and just like a sub-hilt would allow you that counter pull with drawing a blade that's potentially stuck in something, but you're obviously not worried about any, protection the guard's going to give to your hand. And that's an argument I think I'm going to bring up in another video. How much should you even think about relying on a guard to protect your hand versus keep your hand from sliding up onto the blade, which I think is its primary function when we're talking about knives. Now, it doesn't have enough mass in my mind to be able to give authoritative strikes with the flat or the spine, so I'm definitely going to be using the edges and the tip. That also would affect my confidence in parrying. And that's another subject to bring up. How good is a knife this length at parrying? Well, using it in my offhand as a companion parrying tool, or backup, yeah, that could be used that way against lighter blades. I wouldn't want to try to stop something really heavy from coming in with this, unless I absolutely had no choice. It was either try to take it on the knife or me. But that would not be my primary strategy. My primary strategy would be to be evasive with it. Counter thrust, counter cut, move around, evade, yeah. And we'll talk about that going forward as well. Can also choke down on it for those more nimble snap cuts. That's fine. Now, straight grip doesn't really give me too much indexing. It is tapered at the top, so it does hug my hand at the top. My pinch grip feels pretty confident, but as I get lower on the blade, I feel like I might slip off. Speaking of slip off, okay, let's talk about reverse grip and transitions. It is narrow enough at the top that I could do my finger twirl, which I don't recommend. Pinch flipping, yes, it's pretty smooth in the pinch flip, and it's light enough that I feel like it's not going to pull itself out of my hands with its inertia, but I don't really have an indexing point or any flare down here, so it feels a bit slippy. Redoing the bone grips gave it just a little bit more texture, and I found when these get wet, kind of like G10, they do get grippier when they're wet. So yeah, that might be a consideration there. But it does transition pretty well. Now in the reverse grip, yes, I can, in the conventional blade away from me, I can do the slashing, I can do the stabbing, I can hook with the false edge, I can also reverse it around, lock that guard into my palm, and use that false edge in more of a hooking slash. Kind of slightly like a karambit, let's say. And that does help me get the tip on. I'm going to do some comparisons, stabbing in this orientation with the blade in either forward or towards me to see what that does to penetration on targets. Yeah, I'm thinking this actually might be more effective in certain ways. It depends on what you're doing with it. And again, this is just an academic discussion. Don't want to lose the magic green dollar sign for YouTube monetization. But good to know what your knife can do. But yeah, I like it. I think I do like the profile of the Gold Rushes better, but this is a nice, straight, nimble knife. If this kind of blade shape and grip appeals to you, I would certainly recommend it. But speaking of recommendation, okay, I'm going to say I like the Sandvik one more than the Damascus. The Damascus is pretty to look at, but I think in terms of utility and not worrying about it and just the quality of the edge, yeah, Sandvik. Plus, you can't argue with the price. You know, it's just a little bit more than half the price of the Damascus one at Chicago Knife Works. For a knife of this size, quality, functionality, I think it's actually a really good deal despite, well, its flaws. All right, so if you have any questions about this knife, other Baron Son products that I've reviewed, or want to talk about similar knives, definitely keep those recommendations coming as well. Those are starting to pay off for me, by the way, so keep it coming. Let's get our conversation going in the comments. As always, thanks for watching, following my journey, subscribing to the channel, liking the videos, and I hope to see you back for the next installment.